Okay, with Kalyn Elizabeth Wood, Screaming Silence is the short film played at the Female Directors Film Festival. She is the co-director, she's the star, and she's the writer of the film. Any producer, I guess, too, right?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah, producer as well.
You're the instigator of the film. You're the seed that started the project.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I had a vision. I was gonna get it done.
Is this your first film that you directed?
Yeah, it was my very first film that I've ever directed, ever, and it was a very daunting task to do. But I had a great co-director, Hal Walcorn, who understood what I was trying to do, and he really guided me a lot along the way.
So you're an actress by trade. That's your first kind of that's your professional job, I guess. You're being an
Yes,
actor.
yes, that's what I do normally.
Yeah, yeah. And what you did to great effect in the film as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So there's no dialogue in the film, which is contrary to most actors, because usually the actors, if they're going to make a film that they're going to star in, they want lots of juice, they want lots of like a big monologue.
Yeah.
But you did the opposite. You just basically said no dialogue. I'm going to tell the story through my face, through the emotions of the scene.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I am a little bit different, but I thoroughly enjoyed not having any dialogue. And really enjoyed writing no dialogue because at first, the first iteration of the film had a lot of dialogue in it. It just wasn't working. It wasn't working with the mood and the tone and the overall scope of what I was trying to do. And it was actually my mom's idea when I was kind of complaining to her, being like, it's just not working. I don't know what to do. And she came up with having a piece of silence at a very poignant part of the original script. And it worked. And so then when I kind of scrapped the whole thing, I said, what if I just do the whole thing with no dialogue? But it definitely was a challenge because, being a professional actor and going to acting school and all of that, it's all about that text and getting into the text and
Yeah.
doing that. But I would love to do a whole feature length film that obviously still had some dialogue in it, but mainly uh, challenges me to really dig deep. Because when you think about it, our world, if you live alone or if you have a day where you really don't talk to anyone, you kind of are constantly having conversations with yourself within, but your world necessarily isn't ever truly silent. I mean, you have the clock going in your kitchen or the kettle going or you're cooking. And so I just wanted to challenge myself. What would that be like just to sit in the actual silences of our world? So yeah.
And be able to tell a story at the same time, right? So
Yes.
with
Yes.
and also too, you're not acting with anybody else. So you said you're like in acting class or acting school. You're usually having an exchange with somebody, usually feeding off their energy, feeding off their performance. This is you're literally performing into the camera, I guess, right?
Yeah, and that was something that I had years ago when I was in high school. I took a class on camera work at a very young age. I was very interested in understanding how you can kind of have this love affair with a camera. And I had a great coach at the time who basically taught me that the character is supposed to interact with the camera as if the camera is a character with you in the film.
Yeah.
And and so the choices that we made in the shots that we chose was purposeful so that the audience can almost be the character that is with Elizabeth in the film.
Yeah.
But it was a task to do for sure because you're having all the hats that I had to wear the 2 days that we filmed. It was kind of like, okay, now I have to look at the script and know that this is the shot that we're doing, and then ask my co-director if it looks okay, and then all of a sudden drop back into a character that wasn't dissimilar to me, but
Mhm.
was also very different than me.
Yeah, 100%. And from a directorial standpoint, speaking of the camera, there's two perspectives in the film, which is interesting because it's 17 minutes, the film 17 minutes, and you have fly in the wall, like kind of like we're kind of like sneaking into your world from an outside perspective. And there's the scenes in the bedroom. I love that shot in the shower where like there's like that lack of
Yeah,
focus and kind of metaphorically what
yeah,
you're dealing with at the time. But at the same time, then you kind of move into, especially in the beginning of the film, you move into like we're seeing what you're seeing. We're seeing your perspective. So you're kind of like moving back and forth from a direct. I don't know if that was conscious on your part when you kind of set up the shot list? I'm curious about that process.
It was absolutely purposeful. So I'm so glad you picked up on it. And a lot of other people have picked up on that, of where they've had moments where they felt that they could experience right alongside her of what she's going through.
Yeah.
But then when you are completely zoomed out, you only are allowed to be an observer. So it's kind of a control thing that I wanted to test with an audience. Can I, just as editing, but also in choosing shots, could you manipulate the audience in their feelings of just what they're looking at? And so yeah, it was purposeful that you could feel like a fly on the wall, but then you could absolutely put yourself in exactly what she's going through. And I think also it was, as in writing it and also directing it, I felt an immense sense of protecting the character so that certain moments could only be hers. And then there are other moments that could be shared, because what she goes through is so tremendous,
Mm.
and it's complex and it's confusing at times. And for some people, it's ambiguous. And so I think in that, being purposeful with that, I still wanted to protect the character at all cost.
So the plot, I guess, is that she's going through, this is the aftermath of a traumatic event.
Yes,
So you don't have to
yes.
get too personal, but I'm assuming this is kind of like a personal story that.
Yeah, it's loosely based off of experiences that I had, but also of women that I've known, and kind of what is unspoken in the realm of domestic abuse or sexual assault, and women who experience loss, infertility, or just it's an immense subject that we don't necessarily talk about, and it is uncomfortable, you know. Even as someone who has known people who has experienced it, who has experienced it on some level, of what Elizabeth goes through, it you feel very much alone. And then, so I think, getting back to the directing bit of it, I wanted to see how long an audience could sit with her, because it is uncomfortable at times to painfully sit and watch what she goes through.
Mhm.
And I think I kind of wanted to see how long an audience can hold on to that and what they can transpose from themselves onto what they experience, and so that there is some sort of release that everyone collectively has.
Well, I think the audience just wants to hug her. I think that's
Yeah.
the reaction, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely wanted, by the end of it, because we shot most of it in sequence, which is very rare to do. But I think the thing we shot first was the shower scenes, just
mhm.
because that's the lighting was perfect for it. We just said, okay, let's just go ahead and do that. But everything else was shot pretty much in sequence. So by the end of day two, I was ready just to kind of give myself a hug
Yeah,
and be like, oh, okay.
because it's, well, let's just call it what it is. This is not an easy performance. Like as we described before, like you're not taking any text, you're not working with anybody, especially the bathtub scenes, because I'm assuming you're very vulnerable while you're
Mm,
shooting it, and then
yes.
you're just like, but then you have to evoke that emotion. I don't know, like
Mm.
basically like, and then you're also co-directing, so you got that like, part of your brain going on, which is conscious
Mm.
or unconscious, right? Because I know you're in the performance, but at the same time you must be thinking about everything else, one would assume.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think there were a good amount of times where, Hal and I had so much, we planned so much in a short period of
Mhm.
time. Uh, but when he first read the script, he completely understood what I was trying to do. And that was such a gift, because I can't even imagine if I had given it to someone for them to help me with it. And they were like, I don't understand it. Whereas he completely understood it. And so when it came to communicating on a particular part of the day, to say, I'm really going to need you to take the reins on this, because I don't want to have to be thinking about when to say cut, when to do all those things. It was an absolute trust that he could allow me to be an actor, and use and kind of dig into my craft a bit, because it was a task to do, uh, just not having anyone there. It was just, but also it was incredibly, as just a human being, introspective. What do you do when you are alone and when no one's watching? What
Yeah.
is that like? And but yeah, there was a couple moments where the camera kept running and I was like, do we say cut? But it was great because Hal just would just be watching me, and that was a great compliment. He was like, oh no, I forgot to click cut.
Yeah. Well,
Which is
yeah,
great,
there's,
for
yeah.
someone who, yeah, for someone who I'm working with, it's just sitting there watching. I remember at one point we were on a lunch break and he said to me, he said, I kind of feel like a piece of furniture. I went, oh, I'm so sorry. Why do you feel like that? And he said, no, you just, the minute we say action, you completely go away and she completely steps in, and I can't help but watch. And so for a colleague and someone who's helping me to say that, that meant the world, because it meant that I was on the right path of doing something that was good and that meant something.
Yeah, there's some incredible moments in the film. Like, I don't know, like even the simple moment where she's like got the phone, because we live in the world of devices, and she basically is like on the kitchen table, and she's like, okay, because I've been there before, where personally, where like you basically are just so low, but then you realize like you want to you're looking for support, I guess. I'm projecting what the character's going through,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
basically, yeah. Go ahead.
I think it is that, it is so easy to pick this up,
Yeah,
but we pick it up for entertainment, I think, nowadays, rather than, I think, we teeter on that. It is so easy just to click, call this one person or call your mom or call your dad, and we just choose not to. And I think it's almost because it is so accessible, it's too easy to call. But I think when you're in that state, you question whether or not, if you're going to be heard,
yeah, exactly.
and you're going to be, someone isn't going to just try to come in and fix it. Is someone just going to truly listen to me? And I think, having then the voicemail be heard, that clearly someone can sense, someone as close as her mom can sense that something's wrong. And actually, that is my mom's voice in the film.
Okay.
So it was really special to kind of have her. I said, I need you to do this. Can you do this? And she was like, yeah, sure. So to have her, I think, probably helped my emotion in that.
Mhm.
But then again, I dedicate the film to my parents, so it was a very special moment to hear her voice in it and to use it.
Because like, well, because when you dialogue, obviously she's gone through something. We can figure out like you kind of tip the hat where in the beginning where it's like it's some sort of abuse,
Yeah,
but it's not totally clear in the film, which is fine because basically she's obviously going through something. But basically, when you reach out to somebody for support, I'm just projecting again, but they can make it worse. There's two things that are happening. One, that person can make it worse, and two, that you have to actually express to somebody like how hard that is sometimes, right? Like it,
abs-
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I'm someone who sometimes, it's interesting, as me, Kalyn, I have difficulty articulating my own emotions outside of acting, and I think that's why I love acting so much, is because I am in another character able to articulate my emotions very pinpoint.
mhm.
And I don't know why that is, but I completely agree. Sometimes when you do reach out to someone and they're talking to you, it just makes you kind of just want to go, I wish I would have never called you. I wish I
Yeah.
would have just left it and kept it inside. But I think it's also because, one, it's not a conversation that people have. It's too taboo, according to people, to talk about it and to be quite real about it. Um, or, I think also sometimes people who have witnessed abuse feel like they can't even talk about what they've seen.
Mhm.
And so and I think, yeah, but I agree. It does make, sometimes it makes it worse when you reach out to people. And I think, in a backstory of Elizabeth, she probably has reached out in other circumstances and
Yeah.
felt like she wasn't heard, or sometimes, I think with this, looking at it through a mother-daughter lens, which is what I wanted to do, um, and the aspect of, when you're growing up, your mom wants to protect you so much from so many things. So she might not tell you the whole truth, or might not tell you things at all. And then when you get older, you're like, why didn't you tell me this?
Yeah.
And she goes, well, I was just trying to protect you. And then the roles reverse when you become an adult and the biggest thing happens to you or something horrible happens to you and you want to protect them from feeling bad because they couldn't protect you. And so it's this kind of um what the scale that goes back and forth between this internal struggle with Elizabeth of I I I want to reach out. I need someone, but it's
Yeah.
easier for me to sit here and self isolate because I don't want to hurt her and I don't want to make her upset. I think I do that with my own mother. I'm like, oh, I don't want to tell her because I don't want to make her upset about something or make her worry. But that's a part of life. But it's interesting how when you become an adult, those roles reverse a bit with your own parents, and I think that is reflected a little bit in the film.
That's so interesting that you just mentioned that because I was going for a basic, that's so profound what you just said because I was thinking of more of a basic element where like you feel like your character, you're embarrassed to say it, you're embarrassed to talk about it because you
Yeah,
feel that you're responsible, even though you're not. Basically, it's
yeah.
part of being a victim, right? Like you believe that
Hmm.
you're 100% like it's your fault, right?
Yeah,
So
and that is an element of Elizabeth, the
yeah,
constant what could I have done? What's going on? I have to deal with this. This is, my responsibility now. Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, it's so interesting. So basically the ending at the end it says I moved my chair into the sun. I sat in the sun the way hunger is moved when called fasting. Called fasting. So I kind of butchered that a little bit.
No,
Uh
it's fine. It's one of my favorite poems.
what's the
Um,
poem from? What's the reference?
uh, um, it's a poem by Jane Hirschfield, who's an American poet.
Okay.
And when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I had an amazing English teacher. Her name was Miss Reddy, and I had a tough thing happen. One of my parents was very sick, and I couldn't find a good perspective about it. I couldn't. I was just really going through it as a 12-year-old, and she shared with me this poem, and it's all about perspective,
Hmm.
and it's all about okay, I moved my chair into the sun. I moved myself out of that dark place, and I sat there, and I'm going to sit there in the sun. I don't want to be in the dark place anymore. And then the way hunger is moved when called fasting.
Hmm.
So it's that paradox of, if you think about it, well, I'm it's not hunger. I'm fasting for a reason. So it has all this different perspectives. For me, that poem just speaks to having a different perspective on something and purposefully moving out of that dark place and putting a different meaning to something and rewriting your story so that you can look at it from a positive perspective,
Yeah.
which is what I've done with a lot of experiences in my life. And so that poem just meant so much, and I felt like it really went with the ending of her opening up on the beach and that whole thing of just having that different perspective but the relief of the perspective. So it meant a lot. I'm so glad you brought it up because a lot of people just think, oh, that's a nice little bit, but I'm so glad you brought it up because I love talking about the film.
Yeah, no, it's a really good ending to the film because it's like especially when there's no dialogue and it's not you're not hammering home your theme to the audience, but it just kind of has a
Mhm.
little kind of end little like little sonnet at the end where like yeah.
Yeah, that's probably
So
the Shakespeare training in me. I was like, let me add a little a little text in here for them.
no, I'm glad it's at the end. It's like sometimes people put it at the beginning, right? Because they kind of like want to
Yeah,
set the tone. But I like
I
it.
kind of I like when I'm thrown into something immediately. Like I don't have a
Yeah.
choice but to be in it. And so that's why I chose to have it at the end.
But that's a confident director because basically, because sometimes that's I love that too, but at the same time, it's like that's confidence, meaning that you're confident that you're going to grab the audience right away, right? So
I think I probably had blind confidence because I had never directed
ignorance is
before.
good.
And
Yeah,
but I think I would say that even in my acting and character choices or and research, and I wanted to do something that I would want to watch.
yeah,
But I wasn't really, I've had some amazing experiences with audience members saying, thanking me for the film, saying that they feel seen or that they haven't necessarily been through what Elizabeth's been through. but they have felt that way. And that means the world, because then it means that I've created something that is just ambiguous enough that can be
Yeah,
transposed onto anyone's life.
100%.
And I think I made the film for myself, and inadvertently people like it. Which I think is how you should start. You know, you make art and create things for yourself, and then you just leave everything else up for any other thing to happen. So I've just been so thankful and enjoying the ride of it, you know?
Yeah, well, even I'm telling you that I caught that emotion. It's a universal emotion. It's not about the context of why she's going through it, but it's just a human thing that many of us go through, right? So, and like
Yeah.
trauma, it's just after a traumatic event. It could be very different. It could be physical, emotional, all those things, right? So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I want to talk about the post-production, because basically the sound design's great. It's a great sound design. And
Thank you.
I'm curious about what your part of it was, because it says that Hal was the editor of the film. And you're
Yeah.
also in every scene, obviously. So you can, were you choosing did you have that perspective of like, because sometimes it's like I've talked about this before in the past, like with people on very high levels too, where like they're directing they're directing themselves on camera, right? But it's the post production, it's the editing that's whereas the magic happens, and they have to step outside and basically look at themselves as that they're not them. That makes sense. We're like
Hmm.
just the character in the film that I made, but I'm not. Even though it's me, I have to like serve the story because sometimes vanity can get in the way. Sometimes all those things can get
Absolutely.
in the way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I was asked this question about 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
at a Q&A, in a very different way. I had someone ask me about the vanity aspect because I remember a gentleman came up to me and said, "Did you want her to look like that?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "It's just so raw." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I did." For me as an actor, which I don't think a lot of people, well, maybe some people think this way, but I think this way. I feel more confident when I don't look like myself on screen, or when I don't necessarily look quote unquote pretty, uh, because then I feel like I could be separate from myself, or I feel like another person.
I don't think a lot
Even
of people
though
see that way.
I love it.
But yeah.
I'm like, put like a black tooth on me, like give me. I loved it, and so it was incredibly freeing to be like that, because it was something I didn't have to worry about then. I didn't have to worry about the way that I looked. I
Yeah.
needed to serve. What was most important was serving the story. And then when it came to the sound design, a lot of what you hear is the raw audio that we have, which is what I wanted. I didn't want it to be perfect. And I wanted it to feel this kind of like, oh, I'm in the room with her. Oh, I can, my favorite sound in the film is after she's out of the shower, and when I'm humming in the tub, and then when I'm looking in the mirror and you can still hear the water droplets, or anytime I breathe. I loved it because you can feel the breath that she's holding, or feel the release of the deep breath that she let out. And so in post production, we didn't really add a lot. I think we, a couple times we moved some natural rain sounds that we had, one day it rained, and moved it so that it went along with something else. And then in some of the bits of the film, we had some kind of reverberation sounds to kind of amp up the intensity, to go into, like, for example, the kettle boiling, just to make that a little bit more
Yeah.
punchier.
Yeah.
And that was done by my wonderful friend Oliver Bignell, who's a part of a wonderful band in Cornwall. And so I reached out to him and I said, "Would you be willing to help me with this?" And he said, yes. And that was a great thing. And there's a bit of almost like a lullaby that happens in the film when my character is laying on the bed. It's about, like, I would say, like maybe 14 minutes in that happens. And that was very purposeful. We wanted to allude to what could possibly be going on with her, but we also wanted it to be something that was soothing
Yeah.
to her and soothing to the audience, to kind of make what happens next a little bit more devastating. So it's a little bit of manipulation. But yeah, in the editing room, it didn't take a long time to edit because I think we knew what we had and we were like, okay, boom, 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 and just kept rewatching it over and over again and making sure that it was seamless. But again, we wanted it to be shocking and not perfect.
Yeah, 100%. And so were you worried about the time, the length of the film being 17 minutes? I
No,
guess not.
no,
Yeah.
I wasn't. I really, it's kind of awful in the sense that like I was just like I don't care that it's just 17 minutes and not 20 minutes. Like the film is what I knew that we had it,
No, what
and
I meant
I
is that it's like it's a gutsy choice. One actor, no dialogue, 17 minutes. You don't see that like from my where I perch where I sit. You really never see that.
no, no, and on one hand it was purposeful, and then on the other hand it was also logistics. Because, like I said, the first iteration of the film in writing it was very different. It had a mother in it there present. It had a
Yeah,
friend in there, and it was a
gotcha.
bit longer. And so when it just wasn't working, and I couldn't find the hook, and then it actually wasn't until I found the song by Michael Crean, "Just for Now," at the end that I felt that I could see the ending in my head and I knew the beginning and I knew where I wanted it to go. And so that's when I felt confident enough to scrap what I had and to start fresh. So I
Yeah.
knew I knew I could bookend it, and I just had to figure out the sequence in the middle. And it really, if it wasn't, it was kind of one of those magical moments of sitting on the tube and the song comes on and I saw it all in my head and I went, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to do. Now I have to rewrite it. But yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, it is gutsy to kind of say, okay, it's just going to be one person,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Because with the way you described the first draft, I guess with the mom and the friend, that's like quote unquote like a Hollywood story, right? Like someone goes through trauma, they seek their mentor, their mother, or they seek their
Yeah,
best friend, and they talk it out, right? So
yeah, yeah,
they
and
have a
I think,
conversation about it.
and I
But it's
didn't
not as
mind it.
realistic as your film.
It's not. It's not. It's predictable for
Yeah,
sure, and I
exactly.
think also it's not real life. Like you think about it, and when you go through something awful, most of the time you just want to be alone.
Yeah,
And like, I just recently experienced something quite awful, and I'm kind of like, it's good to be around people. You need the people, but most of the time I just need to be alone and be in my own silence and be within my own thoughts. And when the thoughts get too scary, then I can be like, okay, I think I need to go be with some people and go outside and touch grass. Uh, but that's real life. And also, I always, when I'm in, interviews or Q&As, and I challenge people to say, have a day where you don't talk to anyone and just do your day. Doesn't have to be a sad day, but take note of the sounds that you hear or how you breathe in a certain moment. If you get an email and you go, oh my goodness, or what thoughts come up for you in your head, and then how that morphs your day when you're not distracted by anyone else but yourself.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're so yeah, great film. I hope it serves you well. Like it's really, I love even talking to you. You have a very interesting point of view, very unique point of view. I don't want
Thank
to take
you.
too much of your time. I have two more questions to ask you.
Yeah, go ahead. Go
The
ahead.
movie poster, I love the movie poster.
Which
Uh,
one? We have two.
I don't the one that's like that you're kind of like out of focus.
Oh, the static one. That was the
Yeah.
first one we ever made. And
What's
that
this?
was like,
I don't know
I
what the
just,
second.
the other
Oh, I
one, I
see the
think it was
second
just
one
the,
now. Yeah,
yeah,
gotcha.
that was the first one we ever made. And
Yeah.
that was when, we were done editing it. We needed to make a poster for it. And, the funny thing is, I had no plans to do anything with this. This started out as a project for my dissertation for grad school. And I just wanted to get a good grade. And after I submitted it, I had a bunch of people just watch it. They were like, well, let me see what you made. And I was the only one in my class who made a digital piece. And that's how my producer, Alba Kaufman, came on, and she saw it and she said, you need to do something with this.
Mhm.
Also had my mother threaten my own life to say, if you don't do something with this, I'm going to kill you. She wouldn't actually kill me. She would just threaten to kill me.
No, no,
And
exactly.
but I had so many people, I have the most honest friends in the world who, when I sent it to them, they, had pen and paper ready to go to give me notes. And one of my best friends was like, I wrote great opening shot, and then I had to just watch you. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, for my best friend to say that, who's the most honest person in the world, who's also an actor. Um, so yeah, so that poster, I love that poster. It's my favorite. So I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, it's sort of like, yeah, it's in a vacuum. If you had to you had to show it to the world. You have to give it out there. You said you did Q&As about it now. You have a website about the film now. It's out there. It's its
Yeah.
own little human, like life form, I guess.
It is, and anytime something happens with it, I kind of I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm like, it's just me in the film,
Yeah,
and I think sometimes I don't look in that at it in that scope, and also when you've watched it for the 500th time, you
yeah,
think that it's not good anymore.
of course. And that's the kind of leads to me to the second question, but I just want to point out that the film can play anywhere, right? So
Yeah,
the way you have it, no dialogue, it can play, and but it's universal emotions. So it can play in
exactly.
Australia, it can play in Africa, it can play in Asia, it can play, and it plays like it's played in South America, play in
Yeah,
Europe. It
yeah,
doesn't
that's a
matter.
huge thing, and we also got to be screened at a smaller festival in Cannes, which was amazing.
Yeah.
We weren't able to go, but it got screened there, and that was incredibly special for us.
The next step film festival, right?
Yeah, yeah, they were amazing.
So which leads me to the next question. What's next for you? Are you going to make another film? Are you going to direct another film? You should.
I have no idea because I became a filmmaker inadvertently. Like that wasn't the goal. I had to do it because had to do the project, and I wanted to get a really good grade. And I never really thought about directing or writing, and it's not necessarily like I don't not like it. It's but I think my experience was in a vacuum. I think it was very special. I didn't have it really was just me and Hal on set. So that's a very unique experience to have. And I
Mhm.
think also I'm a bit of a control freak. I don't know if someone would want to work with that, but I think I would. Yeah, acting wise, yeah, I have a ton of projects coming up that I'm doing
Yeah.
acting wise, but yeah, I don't know. I think it would be fun to explore. I feel like I would need to learn so much more, and have a bit more experience, but also directing yourself is a very interesting experience to go through because you have to not be self-critical. You have
Yeah.
to think about what am I doing that's serving the story, and then you can go, well, is it good? But then not, you can't. Sometimes you can't tell if it's good. You can just feel it. And so most of the time, I was like, yeah, that felt good. Okay, let's hope it looks good.
Yeah.
Um, but but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't turn it down, but I feel like a little bit sometimes unqualified. But maybe that's just my own self doubt and self
Well,
critic.
you got award-winning film. Like
I do, I
forget
do.
about remove yourself as an actor because like that's a whole other job, right? So
Yeah.
you made an award-winning film. It's a really nicely put together film. Like I can like break it down from a like, but that's just like people are really bored by that. But basically, it's just like, yeah, the way it's directed, it's like very still. But then you break some rules that, like I said, we talked about the perspectives. You change perspectives. Like it's a very still film, and then you kind of move the camera a little bit. You have a study. You have one like handheld shot at the kitchen table, which is like contrary to what And so I'm just like going on a tangent,
We
but
do break we no, we do break a lot of rules, and I
you
think,
break a ton of rules, but
some
it
festivals
works.
that we haven't been accepted
Yeah.
to, I'm like, maybe it's because we did break a lot of rules when we did this.
Yeah, but that's just nerdville because you're serving the story, you're showing emotion, right? So basically, what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that there you have a point of view. So if I was like your manager or whatever like that or whatever, my suggestion to you would be like direct another small film, but don't be in it. Don't be in it. Just
Okay.
basically direct some actors and basically whatever the story is, right? But basically keep it small, right? And then but don't like just work as a director and
Right.
see if you like it.
That's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'll do that.
Yeah. And then talk to me. We'll talk about it in a year from now in another podcast.
Awesome. Fabulous. We'll mark the date.
All right. On that note, congratulations on the success of the film, and congratulations on everything. You're a fantastic talent.
Thank you so much. It was so nice to talk to you.
Thank you.